Welcome to the Fighting on Film podcast, the podcast all about classic and obscure war movies, from the Normandy landings to the days of chivalry and swords. If it's been captured on film, we're going to try and cover it. I'm Robbie of RM Military History.
I'm Matthew Moss of Historical Firearms and the Armourer's Bench.
Hello, welcome back to Fighting on Film. It's episode 2 of ANZAC Month. And this week we are doing The Lighthorsemen from 1987. Matt, the plot of Lighthorsemen in a sentence or more.
The Lighthorsemen, essentially it's the lead up to the charge at Beersheba.
That's it, yeah. 1917 Battle of Beersheba in the Great War. And it's basically the main plot is about a soldier who finds it hard to kill, basically, as well. That's the main character's arc there. Yeah. So let's get straight into production this week. So the movie was directed by Simon Wincer. Now, before we started the show, I asked Matt whether he wanted me to surprise him with Wincer's works or whether he wanted to know, and he wanted to be surprised. So
I like a surprise, yeah.
It's varied, to say the least. So he directed 1993's Free Willy.
Okay.
And 6 episodes of the Young Indiana Jones series, which large sequences of this movie, The Lighthorsemen, were used in the Palestine 1917 episode.
Yeah, I remember that episode. Everyone hates that series, but I liked it.
I thought it was okay when I was young.
Yeah.
It was perfect.
Yeah.
I remember the gas attack scene in one of the episodes being
that was good.
Quite brutal.
I rewatched some of them recently and they stand up well.
You do.
Coming to a war movie podcast near you at some point.
And then it's a war movie, it counts. 1995's Operation Dumbo Drop.
Oh, fuck off. No way.
Yeah, what a varied career this man's had.
What else?
They're the highlights for me.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah.
That is varied.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah. So this is one of the later films in the Australian New Wave cinema movement of the 70s and 80s.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it was written by...
We're well into it at this point, aren't we?
We're near the end of the sort of coming down off the peak of the New Wave.
Surely that was Crocodile Dundee 3, though, surely.
Probably was, yeah. It was written by Ian Jones, who's an Australian writer and director. And he wrote the screenplay for the 1970 Ned Kelly biopic that starred Mick Jagger.
I had a look at his credits, and he's written a lot of books about, one, the Ned Kelly gang, and 2, the Lighthorsemen. So they seem to be his areas of interest.
And he also was heavily involved directing multiple Australian historical dramas and police dramas, such as Matlock Police and the Bluestone Boys. And the cinematography was by Dean Semler, another Australian cinematographer, who most notably did the cinematography on Mad Max 2 and Beyond Thunderdome, the third one. And then he won an Oscar for cinematography for Dances with Wolves. And in 2002, he did the cinematography on We Were Soldiers. So there's quite a varied mix there as well.
Oh, he's got some quite
some real pedigree
there, even in the war genre.
I think it shows. There's some great like set piece camera work in this, and the sense of scale that the camera work provides in this is really something.
Oh, I agree. It's beautifully shot.
Yeah, it really is. The music was by Mario Millo, who was a member of an Australian rock band called Sebastian Hardy. Then he turned to doing the scores for TV and film, and he won an AFI award for the best original score for this movie in 1988.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it was an RKO Pictures production, along with the Australian Film Commission and the South Australian Film Corporation. And it was released on the 10th of September 1987 in Australia, then in 88 in America. And it was actually filmed entirely within Australia, in Victoria and a town called Hawker in South Australia. And it was shot for 10.4 million Australian dollars, but it only made back about 1.6. So I think it was a bit of a flop at home. Not critically. I don't think the reviews as harsh as the maybe box office was. But apparently the director and the writer had to put in some of their own money to get the movie over the line, which was quite interesting to find out. And there's one little tidbit that I found funny when I was researching. So the crew wore T-shirts with this on the back in text. It said, "The Light Horsemen, they fought against impossible odds. They rode mile after mile across some of the Earth's hottest terrain. Through searing heat and bone-piercing cold, they endured unimaginable hardships." And that was just the film crew. I like that. It's good. If anyone's got a Light Horseman t-shirt, I want one. And our review this week comes from the Canberra Times, 11th of July, 1988. And I'll read you the opening 2 paragraphs. "There's an exciting climax to the Light Horsemen involving a cavalry charge across exposed plain, almost literally into the barrels of the defending enemy guns. It does give a little sparkle at the end of the movie, but I was left wondering whether it was worth waiting for. To get there, we had to traverse a torturous plot about mateship under fire, with a few stock comments on the fossilized tactical thinking which bedeviled military leadership in the painful and bloody transition from the 19th century to modern warfare."
That's interesting that it mentions mateship in there, because that's something that's we talked about last week as well with The Odd Angry Shot. I wonder, is it the case there that there might be a little bit of fatigue with mateship within Australian war movies?
Maybe, perhaps, yeah.
Because it's an element in almost all of them, isn't it? That's only one reviewer, so you can't really say that. But I've seen reviews that suggested that Light Horsemen didn't do as well as Gallipoli because Gallipoli was a glorious failure, whereas the Light Horseman was a glorious success.
Perhaps, yeah.
And that didn't resonate in the same way, or culturally, perhaps, in Australia. But yeah, that's interesting.
Maybe in the Gallipoli is more maybe more popularly known, if that makes sense, than the Light Horseman charge.
Well, I mean, interestingly, in 1940 we had the 40,000 horsemen, didn't we?
Yes.
At that point, it was a cultural touchstone, and it was probably as well known as the disaster at Gallipoli. Perhaps it waned off a little bit, and Gallipoli had been the focus of the 1981 movie, and sort of eclipsed
maybe
other aspects of Australian military history from World War One specifically. But the mateship concept with this is something, because it's 4 or 5 lads that are in this.
It's a bit like The Odd Angry Shot. They're already established friends when they go in.
Yeah, they are, and we join them well into the war as well. So they all know each other quite well, and it does have that little bit where one of them is wounded, later dies, swaps in a new guy, which is kind of a trope done in a few films, where they introduce someone new to a squad.
It's very cliched, isn't it?
Mateship is definitely a prominent feature with a lot of Australian war movies, and it's interesting.
It's what I think. They're very blokey blokes, aren't they? And they're very sort of macho men. Yeah, you get the cliche of sort of being mean to Mitchell for like no reason. It's not his fault, sort of thing. And I'm like,
he's new.
It jars me every time I see that. I'm like, what are you being mean to him for? It's not his fault. He's new. But as always, we ask for your one-word reviews, and this week we've got some absolute corkers. So AD Bond goes with Brotherhood. Ian McKellen says Gallipoli with a winky face. Ernest Malley says Taz, and then he added, it's not a one-word review, but I thought it was interesting. He said, should have been in the 3rd Light Horse, not the 4th. A good Tasmanian has no business mixing with those Victorians. Some regional Aussie rivalry there for you all. Pete the Paints account says Gallantry. David Cobbett says Bonza. And Adam Brown says formidable. That's just a few this week, but we had some really good responses. Thanks, everyone.
We did. We had a bumper crop of good one-word reviews.
ANZAC Month brought out the best in everyone, I think.
Well, there's so many films that people have taken to heart, isn't there?
We're not going to be able to cover them all this month, are we?
No, exactly. That's what I was going to say. We're not going to get there, are we, this month? I mean, we'll just have to continue and do some more throughout the year, or perhaps hold on for another ANZAC Month. Who knows?
Yeah, keep your eyes on the Twitter. We've got a guest for next week. I think you'll enjoy who we've got. It's a repeat guest. That's all we can say for now.
Good clue.
Keep on the socials and you'll find out.
At Fighting on Film.
At Fighting on Film, yep, on Facebook and on Twitter. Matt, do you want to regale us with the cast this week?
Indeed. So it's a solid Australian cast, and there's some members with some really interesting careers. We start off with Peter Phelps, who plays Dave Mitchell, and he had lots of small parts in films and some Australian TV roles, including Baywatch, which isn't an Australian TV role, but is a pretty interesting TV role.
Yeah.
And then we have Jon Black, who played Trooper Scotty Bolton. He was tragically paralyzed on the last day of filming.
Yeah, I read that. It was a shock. Yeah.
It cut a promising career.
I think it did.
Short. He was previously in a few episodes of Patrol Boat and was Flanagan in 1985's ANZAC's. Tony Bonner was Brigadier Murray Botcher, and he was in You Can't Win 'Em All with Tony Curtis and Charles Bronson in 1970, which I watched recently and was an interesting movie. Very interesting movie. I think that one might come in for a future Merc Month. He was also in The Highest Honor in 1982, which is another movie about Z units. It's not just Z Force.
No.
There are others.
No, there are.
Interestingly, The Highest Honor was an Australian-Japanese production, co-production.
Yep.
He was also in ANZAC's 1985 series ANZAC's, and he was also in William Kelly's War in 2014. Bill Kerr plays General Sir Harry Schobel, and he was Flight Lieutenant H.B. Martin in The Dambusters in 1955.
Yeah.
He was also in Gallipoli in 1981, and he was also in the ANZAC's in 1985.
Proper.
So we've got quite a few former cast members from ANZAC's in here. We've got Taz, who was played by John Walton, and he was in lots of Australian TV. Gary Sweet played Frank, and he was also in quite a lot of Australian TV and some films. And was also Sergeant Elmo Gunny Haney in Pacific.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
Right.
Tim McKenzie played Chiller. He was Barney in Gallipoli in 1981, and also had quite a few Australian TV credits. Anne, the love interest of the film, was played by Sigrid Thornton, and she was in the 1982 adaptation of Roger MacDonald's 1979 novel 1915 about Gallipoli. Anthony Andrews played Colonel Richard Meisenhagen, who's the British intelligence officer. He previously played Joseph Gabčík in Operation Daybreak in 1975. He was initially cast as Bodhi in the UK TV series The Professionals, but didn't quite have the right chemistry, so he was swapped out. And then he later went on to be the lead in Danger UXB. He was also in 1988's Hannah's War. And most recently, he played the Prime Minister Stanley Baldwin in The King's Speech.
Oh, yeah, of course he did.
Yeah,
nice.
Then we have Shane Bryant, who played the German intel officer, who arrives at the beginning of the film to talk to the German general and then as an advisor to Ismet Bey. He was a pilot in the 1971 movie Von Richthofen and Brown. And then later he was in Nancy Wake in 1987, which is about a female SOE operative from New Zealand. And he was most recently in Gallipoli 2015.
Well, there you go. Nice rundown there.
And rounding it out, we've got Anthony Hawkins as Sir Edmund Allenby. And we have Gerard Kennedy as Ismet Bey.
Nice. I think it was quite a good cast, actually. Like everyone was.
I think everyone does a really good job in this. There's some really nice little scenes. And a lot of the criticism about the film is, well, the cast is a little bit flat. Perhaps they're not given enough to do, which, I can understand in some respects.
I could go for that, yeah. But then.
But I think it's no fault of their own.
No, I don't. No. I don't think the script is.
It's a very long movie. I think what it is, it's a very long movie. And within that time, you would expect the characters to develop more.
Yeah.
And perhaps they don't develop as much.
The only character
as you would
get
expect
any development with is Mitchell. And his only arc is, I can't kill. That's his only arc.
Yeah, and then he meets a nice girl.
He meets a nice girl, then he's REMC, and then spoiler alert, he takes a grenade to the back, and that's him. That's his arc done. I wish we'd have had more of Scotty, because he's quite important at the end, stopping the wells being blown up.
Well, he is, yeah. I mean, he almost takes on the protagonist role at that point in the movie, doesn't he?
That's a criticism I've got. I'll go in more depth at the end. I don't think the movie quite knows who it wants its main character to be. And that
perhaps so. It's torn between being an ensemble piece and developing individuals, isn't it? At times.
Yeah, I agree. So this week, Shall we go on to the alley tally?
It's time for Alley Tally on Fighting on Film.
So, Alley Tally this week, in a movie about horses, I thought it'd be fun to talk about the tanks that you see very briefly at the start.
They're great, aren't they?
Really
they look
good.
So good.
Yeah, so they are Mark
1s.
IV. What's that in Roman numerals? Christ, you can tell me what's the skull.
IV, that's 4, Rob.
4,
that's
is it
4?
4, right, okay.
Yeah, they should have been Mark 1s,
Rocky 3, Rocky V. No, I can't remember if they called Rocky 4 IV or not. But no, they're Mark 4 tanks. And you see them very briefly at the start. One's called the Nutty. It has that on the side of its if it's his name. But they were mock-ups that were built in factories in Hawker, in the town where the movie was shot. And supposedly they're static mock-ups that were pulled underground by wire, and they had a small crew inside to operate the guns.
That's cool.
Now, I found that online. I couldn't corroborate it. There was no other information apart from what this one forum user said.
They look so good, though.
They look great. Yeah, there's one that's knocked out. I think there's a female and a male version on show. They're a nice little touch. But the only thing that annoyed me in that sequence is you get a German general who is sitting in that sort of castle-y fort type structure.
Yeah.
And he looks at the tanks. He goes, "Oh, that's no way. You don't know how to fight tanks." I'm like, "But neither do you. They're about a year old." Like,
yeah, it's true.
Have you got a clue how to fight tanks yet? Just some of the lines in this were a little bit out there sometimes.
Yeah, I know. Well, this is the thing. There's also a bit there that when the light horsemen appear and they dismount, and he goes, the horsemen, they're formidable, but the English don't know how to use them.
I've got it written down here. It's like, they're on cavalry, they're Australian light horse. And I'm like, yes, we know. Like, we know that's what the
Thank you for
about.
the introduction there, General. And the British, the Poms aren't using them properly.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. It's very, the movie is very talking directly to the audience there, isn't it?
So I did a little bit of research on the tanks myself, and it's depicting one of the attacks on Gaza. I assume it's the first one, perhaps the second.
I think it's a failed second Battle of Gaza at the start. I think that's
right. That would make sense because there weren't any tanks at the first one, but there were at the second one.
Right.
In reality, it was a detachment of E Battalion, and it was commanded by a Major Norman Nutt, which explains why one of the tanks is called the Nutty.
Very good. That's great.
Yeah,
I love it.
And they would have been Mark 1s in reality. They're the ones with the very long 6-pounders rather than the shorter ones, because they hadn't yet realised if you go into a trench and you get your long 6-pounders stuck into the side of the trench, it's not great.
It's not going to be fun, no.
And that's how the Mark IV evolved, or as I should say, the Mark IV. And
that's what I'm going to be calling it now for eternity.
But yeah, isn't it so cool to see?
Yeah.
Tanks in the desert in World War I.
No, I wasn't expecting it. Yeah, but then obviously when the horses do come in, they're just the way they shoot them, the way the sound effects with the galloping hooves. It very like you get caught up in those sequences, don't you? I think they're very well done.
Yeah, they really capture the movement of them. It's beautiful. I mean that intro sequence that you get before they even get to the desert, where it's just some light horsemen rounding up some horses to, I assume, taking train.
Yeah,
it's beautiful.
So
the way that shot is incredible.
Yeah, it's got some really nice opening sort of sections. Yeah, and then it cuts to the main character, I assume, doing horse donuts. Like, what do you call it when you go in circles in a horse?
I don't know. I'm not a horse person.
I don't know.
He was exercising the horse as far as I know.
Sorry if there are any
He was riding it in a circle. Horse donuts, everyone.
Donuts. So no. Put the handbrake on, do a left turn, the horse does a donut. That's how it works, surely. He's doing that, but the cut to that is very editing. Harsh. Yeah.
Oh God, that's what I was about to say. The editing there is very bizarre.
It's very weird.
So it's almost like a smash cut to like, we're in the desert now.
Yeah, it's very weird. It throws you in. You can't complain that the movie doesn't take time getting into it.
Anyway, Rob, this is the alley tally. We need to get back to Kit.
So Light Horsemen.
We're getting distracted.
Yeah, we are. Sorry. We're talking about cinematography. This is a film podcast. What the hell are we doing? So the Light Horsemen. I think they're really unique in the way they look. In the grand scheme of Great War movies, it's not what we sort of expect to see, because we expect, putties.
No, it's a long way away from the recognised
wedding
tropes of Brodies. And
we're not on the Western Front. So you've got British troops in pith helmets and khaki SD. You've got you can see some Scottish troops at one point. So that train sequence is really nice. You can analyze how many different allied nations are represented in that little sequence.
It's a really nice bit of attention to detail.
But I thought that the gear that the Light Horsemen have is just quite iconic, because they haven't got 1908 webbing. They've got their leather 1903 sort of style bandoliers.
Oh yeah,
they've got their khaki service jacket. A lot of them got it undone. Their sleeves rolled up. They've got their really their lovely emu plumes in their hats. Just such an iconic look. It's not something we're used to seeing in First World War movies, and I think for that reason alone, it really stands out. And also, this is my final thoughts later on, but it also stands out in the world of First World War movies because it's set in the desert, and I think we're so popular consciousness, we're so locked into thinking World War One, Western Front, trenches, mud and blood. We don't often think sand and Sinai deserts. We don't think that as often as we should, perhaps.
No, it's true. It's a forgotten front almost, really. It's subordinate to both the Western Front and Gallipoli.
Yes, I was about to say that. Yeah, even Gallipoli's above it in the way we think. As I say, it's just a nice change of pace for a First World War film to go down.
It is. The attention to detail on kit is actually really impressive. And there's loads of beautiful close-up shots as well, which
really nice.
Shows that they've thought about it. So it's close-up shots of officers pushing holsters closed, men taking rounds out of bandoliers.
Yeah.
And there's loads of really great weapons handling close-ups too. So you get to see
everyone taking off their bolt cover off their Lee Enfield before they go into battle. You really see that. It's nice little attentions.
Close-ups of people setting sights, loading stripper clips or charges, as the British called them. And we get to see some nice SMLE Mark III magazine cut-offs.
I enjoyed that.
Lots of stuff like that. And it's nice attention to detail. It kind of plays in with the end sequence as well, because we get lots of close-ups of the Turkish rifles. Yeah. Well, I'll go into it later on because we're going to talk about that sequence in detail.
I like it when you get Taz, when he says, is it Taz? I think when he goes, one up the spad, lads, don't forget about your safety catches. Just that nice little lines. It's really nice little. Yeah. It's another one where, I don't think the
1907 sword bayonets get a really prominent role in this film, obviously.
They get prominently stuck in some Turks at the end.
They do.
They really do. But it's another thing where, as we had with Old Angry Shot, I think the dialogue of the troops is very true. When they're having banter and things like that, I do think that's quite strong.
I agree there. Yeah, I agree. Some other weapons, we had the Turks with Mausers. They should be model 1893s and 1903s. I think they might be later upgrades to 1903s in the film, but I'm not sure. The officers all have Mark 6 Webleys. That's VI, Rob. Mark VI.
Okay, slaughtered. Know your Roman numerals for your chat to fucking Matthew Moss, everyone. Jesus. He went to a Russell Group University. It's what he expects. Sorry, I went to a former polytechnic. We can't all be fucking halos above our heads, can we?
What was I saying? Mauser C96 broom handle Mausers get a nice,
really
nice
little
sequence in there. Scotty ends up with one at the end. We get to see a nice Maxim MG08 is opening fire on the attacking light horsemen at the end.
The long nose red tipped blank in the
I did.
Very nice. Yeah. Only a certain amount of people are going to get that, but if you know, you know.
They got the good stuff.
They did. They got the really nice stuff.
And then there was some really nice mocked up 7.7 centimeter 1896 field guns.
Yeah, they were really good.
That they have in there. I think they were probably mocked up by the same people that did the tanks.
Must have been. Apparently, they all worked on all the factories worked on the props and things. All the the uniforms were made in Australia as well.
They look spot on. They look really good.
Production, yeah.
And then there's a brief scene where you get to see a Lewis gun firing on
very brief
the plane that attacks in the German reconnaissance plane.
They don't hit anything. I don't know how they don't hit that plane, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah, well, those bombs look awful.
They are a bit like pantomime villainy, like cartoon.
Yeah, they're
bombs.
like something out of Looney Tune, almost. In reality, I don't think they had Lewis's. I think they had Mark 1 Hotchkiss portatives.
Oh, okay.
Because they were a mounted unit, and that's what the mounted
would have made sense.
Units normally had. They didn't really have Lewis's, I think, at that point.
Remember, they're not cavalry. They're mounted infantry. Remember, the movie says that.
Or as we know them as dragoons.
Yeah.
That was quite a lot of exposition from that general.
Really was it? I'm general. And then says everything.
And then there's a brief glimpse of a Vickers gun packed onto a horse.
Very brief, but it was nice.
It was. I was hoping that we'd see them taking it off and setting it up. That would be cool.
But that was intercut with lads on camels, which I quite like to see, because camel calls never ever seen in movies. I think ever.
No, it's true.
Maybe in the Four Feathers, perhaps. I haven't rewatched that for a while.
I think the closest you get to that is there's a sequence in Khartoum with Charlton Heston where there's a little bit of camel call. Camels in war films. Let's go.
We won't have the hump, will we? Right.
Oh God.
Moving on. Hello, Robbie here. Did you know you can support the podcast on Patreon? Join the supporting cast today and gain access to exclusive perks, such as discount codes, our monthly Patreon film votes, and the chance to get exclusive merchandise before anyone else. Search Fighting on Film on Patreon or find the link on our website. Thank you. Now back to the show. Favourite scene, and I think we both might be talking about the same scene this week.
I think you're right. So it's the scene where they're on the beach and they're all naked and they're riding the horses, right?
That was so weird. It's like the Top Gun volleyball scene, but with horses in the First World War. It's
nice though. It's set in a rest camp.
Yeah.
That isn't our favourite scene.
No, it's not.
But yeah,
that might be our most unexpected bit. To be fair, it's quite unexpected.
Yeah. And it makes complete sense. They're rest camp for the horses and for the men. Of course. So it's
nice the movie shows that the horses weren't just
go for a swim
at all. They were actually respected and they were cared for properly by the troops. Because sometimes you just sort of forget that the horses are just as important as the troops. 2 cavalry and 2 light horsemen. It's obviously they're intrinsic. And there's a lovely scene before we move on. Actually, there's a lovely scene where they've only got enough water, like 1 quart per man, 1 water bottle per man.
Oh yeah.
And the lads are in this sort of like gully thing where they're having a bit of a rest.
Punches his slouch hat in, doesn't he?
Yeah, the character, I think it's Taz again. It might be Taz. He punches in his
Taz or Scotty.
Yeah, Taz or Scotty. He punches in his hat and he gives the water to the horse, and the horse has a lovely drink, and it's like sort of a really nice little moment.
Spills most of it.
And, it gets everywhere. It doesn't matter. It's not like it's precious or anything with the horse. They've only got so much.
He can't help it. Robbie's a horse.
He can't help. He doesn't know. Yeah, but he'll charge against cavalry. He'll charge against rifle fire like it's nothing. But he can't politely drink some water. Crazy. Anyway, so I think our favourite scene probably. I mean, it's got to be everyone's favourite scene when you watch this movie. If you don't enjoy the massive cavalry charge at the end, why are you watching the Light Horsemen?
Well, the whole film is set up to introduce this climactic battle, isn't it? And arguably, the film does a really great job of setting it up.
Yeah, it does.
And the payoff is there. It pays off really well. It's not like you go, oh, okay.
Yeah, it does. It's not a damp squib, is it?
It's really, very good. It's beautifully shot. It's chaotic. It's frenetic. It's kinetic. It's really good.
The momentum, the speed, the score. As I said earlier, the thunder of hooves. Just seeing that many horses on screen at once, and none of them are CGI.
Hundreds have been trained.
Yeah, exactly.
To be in this scene.
Yeah, like
the scale of it is so impressive.
I wonder how many times they shot it, because it seems such like.
Well, it took them 3 weeks.
Yeah. Wow, really?
So that's like,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, so it was 10 weeks of shooting, and then so a third of that went into shooting the actual climactic battle.
Was 1 week of it just shooting that artillery officer going 400 meters, 500 meters? I'm just like, mate. No one can hear. No one cares.
No one can hear.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, the reason he's doing that is because they've made the point of all the riflemen in the slip trenches have gone 1,600 meters. Set your sights. They set the sights.
They do.
And when do you see people setting sights in a
really
film?
Nice.
Never.
Yeah, that's a lovely little touch. Yeah.
Great stuff.
And obviously, they're firing over their heads, aren't they? So you know that they're going to actually clash. Yeah, it's a nice little thing.
Exactly. There. So. The way that sights work is that they're raised up so that the rifle muzzle is aimed at the right distance. And once the men are past that 1,600 meters, you have to adjust your sights.
All the bullets can go over your head. Yeah.
Yeah, because they are adjusting, and that's the film is suggesting there that's why, because of the Turkish panic of seeing these horsemen coming on.
Yeah,
that's why so many managed to make it to the actual front line. Because if you think really like horses versus rifle and machine gun fire, rifle and machine gun fire should win every time.
Yeah,
and it did on the Western Front. So during the first battles of the First World War on the Western Front, cavalry did encounter machine gun fire with terrible results.
Yeah, there's a great line actually about the actual cavalry charge that I found, and it was from James McCarroll, who was a part of the New Zealand Mounted Rifle Brigade at the time. And he said, "A great sight suddenly sprang up on our left, lines and lines of horsemen moving. The Turks were on the run, and the Australians were after them. We could see horses jumping in trenches, dust everywhere."
And that's what the film conveys perfectly.
And it said the defenders fought grimly and considerable numbers were killed. I mean, like, gosh, yeah.
It's really well done. I mean, there's lots of point of view shots, there's tracking shots, there's bits of slow motion with the horses leaping, there's reaction shots of the men on horseback, the men in the trenches, there's close-ups of weapons being used. You get that really nice close-up of the Turkish rifle sights.
In typical Aussie fashion, there's a nice swipe at the British during that battle as well, where he goes, "What do you think of firing at us, mates? The Turks or the bloody Poms?" It's just like, why are we so bad? What have we done? It's come on. I loved it though; it was great. But then they hammer that bit home where they're all having a laugh. They actually hammer home the horrors of war, where the chap. I forget the guy's name now, but he gets blown up, doesn't he, by a shell literally minutes after laughing about this joke. So it's quite
it's the humor and the horror. That gets killed.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and the humor and horror comes in.
And then Schiller gets shot in the arm, and Dave comes and tends
to him.
Mitchell
comes gets him.
Yeah. And when a wounded Turkish soldier throws a stick grenade, he covers Schiller and gets wounded again.
Because I thought,
and then Scotty goes into the town and confronts the German officer that's trying to blow up the wells.
Yes, because in that book, I thought Mitchell was going to have his arc fulfilled where he killed the Turk trying to kill his mate. I thought he would do that.
Yeah, well,
but then I had this.
He would have done. I think the film's almost suggesting that he would have done.
Yeah,
to protect his friend when he first arrives, because. Then another horseman arrives and sort of breaks them up, doesn't he?
I had this internal battle in my head where I was thinking about historical context. Like, he can't kill. He's got a red red cross armband on. He can't kill. Like my historian brain was going, it's wrong. But no, he didn't. I was like, hang on, please don't let that happen.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, but no, that whole sequence is just something else, isn't it? Like, and the hand to hand,
it really is
so much more brutal than I thought it was going to be. Apparently for overseas they cut about 8 or 10 minutes out of that sequence because of some of the
I think the UK edit had like a 14-minute
because some of the way the horses fell looked quite rough, and some of the the hand to hand was quite brutal. But you can see lads actually getting stuck with bayonets, and it does that whole the brilliant thing where movies do where they show it, they do it but don't show you, so you've got the lads on horseback
quite a few times,
swiping down with bayonets, and you hear thuds and sort of dull hits of metal on wool, and it's quite you can just imagine like how these lads getting felled. It's one of the better scenes in war cinema, I think. And seeing the 40,000 Horsemen from 1940, it's very, very similar, I think, in parts.
It is. I watched it beforehand as well, and I thought, wow, there's a lot of shots here where they obviously perhaps taking a little bit of inspiration.
I think so.
Because you see guys fighting in the trenches. There's a horse riding through one of the trenches. But yeah, I can't think of many cavalry charge scenes in cinema which convey scale and depth as well as this one does.
The one in War Horse is quite good, I think.
That's one of the more recent ones. Yeah, I mean, there's stuff like the Charge of the Light Brigade, both versions. There's a couple of others. There's a Custer movie that does it quite well. The aeroplane one. There's good ones out there, but this is very beautifully shot.
Top tier charging, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, it really is. And it's worth watching the
Fighting
movie.
on films, top cavalry charges, one of those early 2000s clip shows.
Yeah,
walking
exactly,
from a shot holding a saber. You might have seen a cavalry charge in a film, but you haven't seen this cavalry charge in a film.
Cut to like some sort of Z-list Liverpudlian comic going, hey, you know what I fucking love about this charge? Everything's fucking going on. You know, you got horses, fucking bayonets. It's fucking great.
those talking head
They're great, isn't they? It's always the
of those shows.
people. Yeah.
You still put them on.
I know.
It's bizarre.
Anyway,
sorry, international audience. If you're listening and wondering what the hell we're talking about there.
We're talking about a very popular British format of doing the 100 best of something in about 2000 to about 2005. You couldn't move for them. And we used to watch, the thing is, I'm off track now, but we used to sit and watch them as a family, from start to finish.
I know. I mean, I remember watching the war movie.
Yeah, the war movie one was good. Yeah. I mean, spoilers, Saving Private Ryan won, but,
obviously.
Yeah. That's the thing that made me frightened of the war game, actually. That's where that all started, actually.
I know, yeah.
Getting back on track, yeah. But if they do another one, Channel 4, we'd love to be talking heads on it. It'd be great. Obviously. So I think we should move on to final thoughts this week. It's difficult to say. I like it, but it didn't wow me until the end. I thought it was I thought it started off quite strong, and then it had a very long dip in the middle where they were setting up the battle. You have the haversack ruse thing that people, it wasn't very true whether that guy actually did it or not. Did some digging on that. Very interesting. You can make a movie just about that, to be fair. Him coming in was quite confusing for a little while. I thought, was he a spy? Not knowing the history, I was like, is that going to be the new thing? And I felt like the Horsemen themselves were sort of forgotten a bit when that was happening. It felt like, I was like, what are you doing here? Are you showing me the Light Horseman movie, or are you showing me a comprehensive sort of film about the Battle of Beersheba, which it kind of is doing both, I guess. But I thought, I wish it had stuck to one thing. You know what I'm saying? Get going. And then just to quote the end of that review from earlier, and I think it sums up what I'm trying to say better than I can say it. So it said, there are a few too many cliches in The Light Horseman, and at times, almost boys' own annual treatment of warfare will show those Turks a thing or two as a typical remark. Apart from Dave, the characters never come to life. Scotty, Jon Black, is the best, although he's rather stagey Irishman, while the rest are virtually cardboard cutouts of the good, honest Aussie digger. Which I sort of agree with. That's one of my main issues with the movie it's probably my one issue with the film, really, is that it doesn't quite know who its main character is. So then I felt less invested at times. Because
so you get that development with Dave's character. And then other points it feels more like an ensemble piece. Yeah,
it can't quite.
At the end, it kind of puts the protagonist lens onto Scotty's character, where he goes off and stops the detonation of the mines.
Yeah, because Mitchell comes in, he goes away, he comes in and goes away again. And I'm like...
There's some scenes where Mitchell's gone to the ambulance call.
Yeah. And he just turns up again. No, he just turns up at the end again. Obviously, you don't need a protagonist. You don't need one. There are films that don't have one. That's perfectly fine. But I felt like this movie might have been a little bit more stronger if we'd have just had that one character to really sort of hang our hat on. Because Mitchell's not boring. He's not a bad character. I did like his, sort of freezing at the moment of will he or won't he kill? And then that's something that we can all.
I did think one of the scenes where it sets that up was kind of ham-fisted and badly done, though.
What one? What one did you not like?
There's a bit where he's charged by an Ottoman cavalryman with a saber. So he gets up with the sword and he screams, and then there's multiple cuts away from him, back to him, away from him, back to him, it feels like. And it just, that actor that plays the swordsman doesn't really sell it for me. And it feels very clunky, and that whole little bit doesn't work. It's just not very well done. I'm not entirely sure whether it's an editing thing where it could have been cut a little bit more.
I felt that sometimes in the movie, even in the charge, I was like, you don't have to show us that. You could cut from that. It's fine.
Yeah, it could have been a little more succinct, perhaps. But yeah, that bit was a little clunky to me. But that was the only instance in the film where I thought, oh, that's not too great. Generally speaking, I haven't got an issue with the fact that it doesn't know who is the main character and whether it wants a main character. I think as the movie, I think it works because its whole premise is to set up this climactic, beautifully shot charge at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
And there are sequences in the film which do it really nicely. So there's a letter writing scene where the intelligence officer gets and the nurse who Dave falls in love with.
I found that so fucking laborious, that bit.
To write out let me explain.
No, it's fine.
Write out a fake letter to sell the fake intelligence that the attack isn't going to come in where the techs think it's going to come, etc. And it kind of stops it dead a little bit. I agree there, but it's her acting in it is really nicely done. I think she puts in a good performance in that scene, but the scene is a little bit it's long. It's drawn out as well. That's another element that is drawn out.
Yeah.
There's lots of nice sequences where the men are looking after the horses. There's a bit almost inevitably there's a bit where a horse has to be put down.
Yep.
And the emotion comes there.
Quite early on as well.
Yeah. That horse is mortally wounded, and the guy riding it is also badly wounded, and we get some more emotion from the guys when the news that he's died comes through. But as you say, we get that trope again of the new guy getting it.
I sort of I don't enjoy that anyway half the time. I mean, I think there's
but I mean it. Yeah, you can see where it could come from a place of human reality, I guess.
I do. I mean, they're upset their friend's died and he's replacing the friend. Yeah. I know they're upset about that, but I've seen it so many times where I'm just like, there's nothing new here you're doing. You're not adding anything to this trope. It's just, I always think, well, in the character's view, it's not his fault he's new. You're just giving him shit because you can. It's sort of it's a little bit done. I'm a little bit over that trope, but that's just me personally as a viewer.
But overall, I think it works really well. So another tiny little niggling thing would be that the sights on the Turkish Mauser would have been in Ottoman.
I love.
They would have been. They would have been in Turkish, Ottoman Turkish.
Now you say it makes so much sense. But I thought they were just
they were in Arabic. They were in Arabic Western numerals.
But I thought they'd be not in IV. No, I thought they were.
Yeah, no. Not in Roman numerals.
We should call this one the Lighthorsemen Apprentices Roman numerals episode.
So Ottoman Turkish is a little written language that's fallen out of favour. It was a combination of Persian and Arabic. I wrote an article about Turkish Mauser markings a couple of years ago. That's how I noticed.
Right.
Because you wouldn't notice otherwise.
No, I thought they were
really niche.
Yeah, I think they were German supplied weapons.
Again, if it had been in Ottoman Turkish, you wouldn't have gone, oh look, he's sitting it at 1600.
I wouldn't have thought of thing.
And the guy on the rangefinder is now shouting, it's 400 meters.
Yeah.
I mean, so you wouldn't get that. You wouldn't twig.
Didn't speak Ottoman Turkish to them, so that was even more jarring.
God.
You want to go down that line.
If you're gonna be picky on that level, I mean, there's plenty of blackface going on here as well.
A bit.
There's a Turkish staff officer which has the thickest Australian accent you'll ever hear.
That was really weird, wasn't it? I thought that really threw me. I was like, he's like, it's Australian Lord Horse, and I was like, where's he from? Melbourne? It's not Turkish.
I think all in all, it's a good film, and I would recommend anyone to watch it. Not only because it depicts Australians in Palestine and that element of the war, which is so undersold and undertold in film and even in documentary and books. Yeah. Like compare that to the amount of media and material and books and research which is done on the Western Front in Gallipoli, then it pales in comparison. So I think that is, it's an important film in that respect. But also, it's a spectacle. This whole film is a real spectacle. It's an epic in sense of not only runtime, but also not only that opening sequence, which is so beautifully shot, but you get lots of that throughout the film, and that stunning climactic charge. It's just, you sit there and I can't imagine. I've only ever watched this on like a TV or a computer monitor. I can't imagine seeing that charge in a cinema. I would imagine it would have been spectacular.
No, I'd echo that as well. I think it's a decent enough film. if you can stick with the cliches, if you can stick with the sort of a little bit ham-fisted dialogue here and there, a little bit forced exposition, if you can stick with that, and if you can stick with it to the charge at the end, I mean, it's well worth your time.
I also really like the level of detail that they've attempted to go into. So they're using people that existed, real characters. Dave and Anne's characters are said at the end to be based on two real people that married after the war. The officers are all named officers that were there in the field, and I think it does a really stand-up job of trying to be accurate as a film can be, and that's laudable as well.
Yeah, and as Matt said earlier, I think it's important in the grand scheme of great war films because there were only so many films about the First World War set in the desert, and there are only so many films that horse-mounted infantry or cavalry, for that matter. So
true.
It's important. So there we have it. That was The Light Horsemen, episode 2 of ANZAC Month. Next week, we have a special guest joining us for another ANZAC movie. What else is it going to be in ANZAC Month? But this time, it'll be a World War II flavour. That's as much as you're getting this week. As always, stick to FOF on the socials, at Fighting on Film. You'll find us on Facebook and Twitter. And always remember, you can find these episodes on Matt's channel because he uploads them a lot. I often forget. So keep tuned. Stay tuned to FOF.
And don't forget to check out our website, fightingonfilm.com.
And we'll catch you again next week for another ANZAC-related movie.
Bye, guys. Thanks for listening.
Bye.